Hi, I'm Jonathan Brower, or Mr. Brower to the students here at St. George's, and I'm in my 4th year teaching. 2005, and this is a scene of 80-90 in Northern Ohio, where the interstates merge and where relationships are tested. So this was on the drive back from Chicago with the woman I was dating at the time, and about halfway back to central New York on the trip, realized it was not going to be the long-term relationship I thought it might be. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more desolate, nothing more depressing, unless you're breaking up on an eastbound drive back to more snow. So here's a road sign kind of in the snowy Northern Ohio landscape. Man, I love it. I got here by way of 4 years ago, starting teaching again after 20 years of distance from art teaching. And since my family and I moved to Newport back in 2017, I'd had my furniture business where I had it in a shop in town, and I was doing that part-time, full-time business running, my furniture shop, and then also teaching. And that was for 1 year, and then I committed full-time here at St. George's. So now I'm in a space where I get to share kind of the 20 years of my getting my butt kicked, successes and failures all on the world. So here I am. There's me, the cutting board. Is this video or is this?
It's a
video. It's stills.
For a piece of furniture art, my understanding is that like the meaning behind each piece of work isn't as important as like the visual effect, right?
What? Well, it's a different craft, right? It's a different output. It's got a different function. So again, so I'm not going to eat my chips off of the picture of my son, right? So this will be up on the wall. Yeah. Whereas, again, the table standing on the piece has to endure somebody running into it. It has to stand up to food, abuse, and heat and impact. So different materials.
But it doesn't like convey like love or something.
Like a love? Why can't it? Yeah. So making something slow and thoughtful that then holds someone's morning coffee as they watch the sun come up and they write in their journal can provide a level of comfort and experience that otherwise might be found somewhere else. So in fact, this table, actually, my mother-in-law has a version of this table for this little sample. It's one of her stands in the morning where, again, she has her coffee, watches the birds, watches the sun come up, has her morning meditation. So for me, making a piece knowing that that's part of her experience is really impactful for myself.
Yep. Why did you choose to become a teacher?
Teaching, for me, kind of happened to me. Being a teacher, I feel kind of in my fibers, in my being, to kind of the teacher attitude, the teacher calling, the teacher vibe, as it were. But I never sought to be a teacher. I was at Syracuse University for painting and the studio arts, and I was a painting major. Just all my time was spent in studio and kind of being creative. And I was a TA in my senior year with one of my professors, and I was looking at grad school at an MFA track. And at the same time, the foundations department asked me to graduate and then teach and be a college instructor. So I thought I needed a break from school for a minute. And so for the next 3 years, I was the college instructor in the art school up at Syracuse. So kind of teaching just kind of presented itself, and then it continued to show up in different ways. Eventually in the furniture world, and now back in at St. George's, I get to use all my fine arts and my woodworking skills. The boards, there was no two alike. So in the process of making this, and again, like in the article, you'd see it, it's a bunch of different crosscuts and then kind of reorganized, glued, crosscut again, reorganized, glued, a few different times. And so you get 3 different angles in the angle cut process. And so you could have a batch of material going through the same way and make 6 or 10 cutting boards. And you would see they were all kind of of the same kind of family tree. They all kind of shared a bunch of traits, but no two are alike. Again, because everything was kind of reorganized, no 2 cutting boards were exactly the same.
Can you talk about your art a bit?
My art. So, my art has evolved forward, backward, up, and down.
Yep.
Originally in high school, I just remember seeing a really intense culture of studio arts in high school, which was phenomenal and really inspiring by the other students. And I thought, that's what I want to do. So I saw painters and I saw drawers, and they were intense and they were serious about it, and I fell in love with that. Followed it to school, to college. And then as I continued to take classes and explore more mediums and materials and techniques, I came across the wood shop. And so my first year teaching, I was making furniture for my new young adult single life. And so I had to make a coffee table, I had to make a desk, I had to make a dining table. So I just kind of made what I needed. And so having the access to the university and the wood shop, it presented a lot of opportunity and exploration. And then someone said, there's a cabinet shop that needs help. And it's a former sculpture major turned cabinet maker. You should go give him a call. And I did. And I showed up one afternoon and I didn't leave for 3 hours and they started paying me. So for the next 2 years, I would work at a high-end furniture and cabinet shop back up in Syracuse, doing kitchens, vanities, tables, TV consoles, mantles, anything out of wood or materials adjacent to that. So after a few years of that, I got married and moved to North Carolina. And I set up a studio in my garage. Like any self-respecting creative person, I needed a space. And so I had set it up as my painting studio. I had my drums over here, I had a keyboard over there, I had my paints. And slowly, I started buying more wood and tools than painting supplies. And eventually it became my furniture space. And so I fell head deep in love with furniture making. What these are samples I would make for clients or for prototyping or experimenting with joinery when making something. So a couple examples of like dovetails, smaller or machine cut or by hand, some oak and some maple. Other examples of joinery, whether it's through tenons, maybe that are wedged. So this is a prototype for a little table, so where the leg would meet the apron. So in this case, I didn't make the whole thing. Just want to test the joint and some of the curvature of the leg. Another example where this is some reclaimed southern yellow pine from old mill buildings up in like Pawtucket, Fall River, where they would decommission a structure and then through reclamation where they would take all the materials that are salvageable, so like wood and the brick and the steel. And so we would mill this material. There'll be old growth and very stable. And so this was an example of a miter joint that we could stand on.
Really?
That's strong enough that with the
nice.
The joinery embedded. So what's inside is an aluminum and wood embedded L bracket. So the glue and the joinery is good enough, because I was so good at this, that we make tables or kitchen islands out of this sort of thing. So 9 or 10 foot tables, and this would be the joint that would run down the length of the side of the island or the table.
What part of furniture making makes you prefer it more than the traditional painting?
I think my profession changed. So I went from teaching at the university, being my main time employment, to teaching kind of on the side, while my full-time employment became cabinetry and furniture. So it mimicked what I was doing the day getting paid for. So I fell in love with making things at a high end. I love finer details. I love executing at a really high level of competency and execution. And wood and the tools allowed me a really interesting level of precision, but also the creative options and opportunities to create designs and make them kind of into space. So sculpture in a way, with the parameters that it's useful. So more of a craft than the art at the time. So learning to make something functional and kind of around a form.
Do you consider your work as a commodity or a piece of art?
Can it be both?
It can, of course it can.
I think there are times when it's one or the other, and there are times where I'm not sure which is which. Or it can be one at one time and one at another time. So for example, like a cutting board, it's very functional by design, right? The problem it's solving is you need a surface to prepare food on. So in this case, I came up with this many years ago, watching some other uses of scrap wood and doing angle cuts. A cutting board doesn't need to be this exotic looking, but it can, right? So it can be this interesting looking. So this is a bunch of end grain, hasn't been oiled in a while, so it's a little dry looking, but it's a series of cutoffs. And so it started out using scrap woods and making use of the smaller pieces that would otherwise be kindling or firewood. So this, I think, is an interesting meeting of the two, something that's artistic and something that's utility. So this is a really solid cutting board. It's easy on knives. We would make them in different sizes for different functions. But aesthetically, it looks very interesting, more than a piece of plastic, perhaps. And God forbid glass. Don't ever use the glass cutting boards. That's a sin. So this is a very durable wood, renewable materials, and then this became a product for us in the business, where we'd make these order.
I've once interviewed a RISD professor, and he's like a furniture artist. He only creates art, like furniture, as like art pieces that are seen in the show. And I've seen his works, and I didn't understand like why they're a good piece of art. So I just want to ask you, like, how do you draw a line between, like in furniture, how do you draw a line between a good piece of art or like a commodity that's like used by people?
Something being art and something being useful.
Like how, because some of the furniture art pieces, they are sold in the market, others are seen in a gallery as like exhibitions. Like
Sure.
how do you differentiate between the two? Like which one is which?
Price.
So if you
Yeah, sometimes it's price, is sometimes who wants it and for what purpose. A table for one person might be a piece of artwork, and a table for someone else might be just where dinner is served or where homework is done. But like the cutting board, it can be both, right? It can be an artistic experience whilst being a utility interaction. So it's art that's used, right? So everything around us, from the table saw to the building to the cutting board, has been designed to solve a problem. And sometimes the function of the piece comes first and the form follows. And I think in art, it's all about the form, and the function kind of gets found out sometimes.
So you weigh the form more than the function more than the form.
Depends. So I think that's the division between like craft and art, right? Craft is more utility, kind of stands on the utility side of the line, right? This has to be useful, has to do something. A teapot has to hold the water, at a high temperature. The cutting board has to support the materials and take knife abuse. A painting, a portrait, doesn't have to hold the wall up, but it has to resemble and kind of like experience the subject, right? Has to show off the sitter in an interesting way, or make a memory. So its utility is to remind someone of something, or evoke an emotion, or a thought, or a time. So to say between art and function makes me think of like IKEA, right? Very good design, but very user-friendly utility stuff.
So would you consider that art?
Absolutely. Yeah. It has to be designed. Otherwise, we'd be sitting on stumps from the tree, right? So you have a stump, and then like that sits you off the ground at 17 to 19 inches off the ground, right? It's a chair. It's doing a job. But does it look good? Is it utility? Does it transport easily? Can you scooch it in a little bit, right? Once it's on the ground, it kind of sits there, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a Windsor chair, which is kind of like an apex of design. It's light, it's durable, it's still made of wood. It's the same material, it's just gone through a change. Is it art, or is it utility? Is it just functional? But if we continue to polish to the point that it's form and function, just find that nice little bit of tension, I think that's where interesting design and art exists.
Yeah, that RISD professor, he held a very different opinion. He thought that like IKEA is like good looking, but it cannot be considered as real furniture art, and only those that are like exhibited in the gallery and surrounded by people are art. Just two different perspectives.
Sure. Yeah, and it's also who makes those decisions. Right.
Do you think a good piece of art can be defined by like how well known it is, or like money?
I think it tells you how well known it is and how expensive something might be, right? Price is usually an indicator. So a cutting board that's $20 tells you it is worth $20, but when you give your money, it's worth more to you than the $20. If a cutting board is $500 or $1,000, you're not going to buy it unless it's worth that or more. So the same way someone might buy a used Honda Civic, let's say, or maybe a Lamborghini, those two individuals might want something very different from the car. So if your cutting board is purely utility, no one's going to see it, I just need it to, not chop the countertop, $20 all day, or maybe a little nicer, right? Maybe it's a little more durable, maybe it's $40, maybe that's the IKEA version. But if you're looking, I'm not selling these anymore, but like there was a point where someone really enjoyed cooking and preparing and kind of hosting, and they wanted their tools to kind of match the experience that they wanted their the people enjoying the food to have. And so they wanted the lighting, they wanted the sitting, they wanted the drinks, the conversation, the cutting boards to kind of match that, to match what they were putting out.
Can you talk about this piece of work?
Sure. So this is a demi-lune, a cherry demi-lune table. And that is loud. And so this piece, I'll bring it right down here. Shitting. Solid cherry wood. And this is I made for a client back in 2013, 2014. It was one of 4 tables I made for their home. So they live in a little Cape style house, which is just kind of a 1-story with maybe a half story above, and up in Marblehead, up in Massachusetts. And their front door would open and would only leave 12 inches of space before it hit the wall. So we had to design this specifically to fit the width and the depth of the space. So that was one of my real, my joys, is working with clients, designing furniture or pieces to fit their lives and needs. So I said, we want this to be kind of where the keys, the phone, and the mail gets dropped right when we come in, but we only have so much space. Let's design it. And they loved kind of a modern take on some early American designs. So it's a kind of a pared down demi-lune design. Historically, you can see a lot of these with inlay designs or other embellishments or angles. Just one solid material, being cherry. And again, just the straightforward architectural pieces with a little bit of flourish. So some pencil rolled flair on the back, and some slight radius curve here just to give it, again, the design. I think the details are the design, in the words of Charles and Ray Eames. So the little touches are what give it its character. But this was the second one I made. I made one for them, and then the second one I made for myself. And so I've had this in my house, getting abused and used by my kids and myself for about 14 years.
Interesting. So do you think there is a standard for art?
Is there a standard for art? Yeah.
Who do you think is shaping the standard?
Like anything else. I think you have kind of the art world, right, with capital A. The ones, the tastemakers, the ones who decide Sotheby's or in collections who's going to get a show. They have their standards for what qualifies to be at that level. And then I think you have art that means something to someone for their own reasons. So for me, a drawing for my kid is going to be much more valuable to me than to someone else, to you perhaps. Or perhaps a student makes a drawing in a class and it's going to be really important to me, and that will be high art in a sense, because there's story and there's purpose and there is a sentimentality to it. Do I want to have a Da Vinci or a Lucian Freud in my collection? That'd be cool, but like that sort of experience is more, take it as inspiration.
What?
Yeah. I wouldn't want that. I have room for those things in my life.
That's
I want my kids' drawings. Or I want pieces, maybe Lucian Freud, because someone like Lucian Freud was so influential to me. But do I want a 6-foot, 8-foot painting in my life? That it would occupy it, like, unnecessarily. So what I want in my life artistically is experience of the artists and in the environment and the studios and kind of the interactions, but then the pieces from the people that are important to me. So pieces from my friends, pieces from my colleagues, pieces from students, from my kids, and that were given to me or made kind of with me in mind, or were of a time that we were together. So I'm at a point right now in my life where I'm more intentional than ever about collecting the pieces that are important to me from people that I care about. So getting a drawing or a painting or trading. I love doing that. I love bartering, trading with another maker or a creative person or an artist, and say, what of mine do you want? What do you want? And name your price. I want that drawing. I want that print. I want that photo. So is there a standard to art? I think everybody has their own standard for what they want in their life. After that, I think it's just fodder for conversation about what's better and why.
What do you think about modern art?
I think it was a certain time period of art expression.
Will you consider it as like a evolution from the past or a de-evolution?
I think everything is an evolution. I don't think much devolves. Like, you can devolve in some ways.
I mean, if you think like in the past how we can paint like photographs, but now like there's like splashes and stuff.
I think people are searching. I think people are hungry. And when you're a creative, you're always experimenting. And now with like social media and just the technology we have, we are watching everybody's curiosity happen, which I think is amazing.
Do you think we are receiving their like creative processes?
I think we're receiving what they want us to see. So, in an algorithm or on social media, Instagram or otherwise, you're going to see what people want you to see of them. So even on my own Instagram, my own pages, I'm showing what I want to be seen, right? I'm not going to show you maybe necessarily the failures that I don't want to share yet, or something that's maybe more private than public. And I think there's a certain amount of performance in kind of the need to be seen sometimes.
Well, someone shows a banana on the wall and a lot of people sees it.
I think it's an interesting point of conversation. I think the banana is going to rot and it's going to fall away. So for me, an experience like that, I think is what's the takeaway is the conversation. It's less about the banana and what does it represent.
Do you think a conversation should worth that much value?
To someone. It's something I've also learned just kind of being a human is that people will make decisions about how they spend their time and their treasure. And what's important to them is whether they'll put their time and their money. So if something is worth it to them to spend so much money on a cutting board or a banana or the rights, intellectual property, they'll do it if they can. But if you ain't got the money for it, the time for it, then you move on.
What do you think will happen to the art trend in the future?
The art trend in the future?
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't predict the future. I think we respond to what's in front of us. And I think personally, seeing trends is interesting, the same way I kind of watch movies or music or literature move in certain directions or explore different avenues. I think art does the same thing. And I think it's going to be, I know for me, the feedback someone gets from what they put out in the world can, for good or bad, guide them in a certain direction. So if someone gets really positive feedback for something that's not great, do they do more of that or do less of it or less interesting? And I don't know.
Do you think the collectors and rich people, like when they're buying a piece of work, do you think they're buying because they like it or they're buying to buy it to like show that I have this and you don't have it?
I think everybody buys it for their own reasons. And those could be other reasons. So someone who has the means to buy something expensive might mean that they have finally arrived at a point in life that they can afford something that's really important and meaningful to them. So again, finally buying a house, finally buying that car, finally buying that painting that they have, been experiencing all their life. Maybe as a kid, they've seen an artist grow. They finally can afford to have something from that maker or a table. And then I think some people buy things for their own reasons, and sometimes it's to show that they can afford it, right? Watch me do this because I can, right? What we've all, I know I have done myself. I do cartwheels just to prove that I can still do a cartwheel. I'm not going to do one right here. But there's certain levels of because I can kind of mentality. I also know that the art world is different at different strata. So some people buy art because it's an investment. Some invest in artwork because it's a way to move money around in creative ways that can't be tracked. And that's a whole other kind of art world and approach to art versus, I think it's a really important painting and I want to have it. Or I want to purchase it and I want to share it with someone who doesn't have it.
Do you think the business aspect of art right now has been increased from the past, or has it always been like a business?
So an artist like Peter Paul Rubens, or let's see, some of your other romantic periods, or artists that had workshops, they would be in charge of, or they would have other artists working for them. And that was a business. It was very much a business. So they would get commissions to paint royalty or aristocracy or patrons. So doing court paintings like Velázquez, you're getting paid to do your craft. So it was a very much transactional kind of lifestyle. So Rembrandt, I think, died broke, or was very much broke toward the end of his life because he mismanaged money. Yeah, but was had hot rises and falls. So I'll have to double check that. But again, people have been doing those sorts of things, crafting furniture.
I just feel like it's been increased right now because, like as we see, there is a decrease in craftsmanship and a raise in price.
Mm-hmm. Again, I go back to like price as a signaling device that tells you kind of what people are valuing or what an individual might value. What they're influenced by to make that judgment depends. So is it people like us buy things like that for this price, or is it I want that and I can afford it, or I don't buy that because I can't afford it or I don't want it? I think we're also seeing more of humankind than we ever have. I think high and low skill has always been there. It's just we're seeing more of it in some ways. It's broadcasting. But certainly people are sharing everything in between more than ever.